on, we are going to be going over everything you can expect with the final, yes, you heard that right, magical monster. The final magical monster, the quad of the magical Sanctum, will have all the magical elements, including light, psychic, fairy, and bone. And it will release during the middle of Summer Song on July the 21st, 2 weeks about from now. Seeing as though it's the quad, you would expect that it will embrace the Magicals class overall in both its design, its sound, and everything that it brings, especially with it being the conclusion to this magical saga that we've been experiencing through My Singing Monsters now for 2 years. It's been a really long journey, and I feel like it needs to conclude the Magicals in a really fitting manner, and what better to do that as well than the quad that is going to harness all the elements. As for how it's going to do this in terms of its design, I think it's going to be tied into legend/myth to get that fairy element in there, and I would expect for its design to resemble magic. It's the final magical monster as we've been over, and there's no more after this, and it's been a long epic journey, so it really does need to conclude the magical saga in a fitting way. And when you think about the magical class, I do think you kind of don't think about what the magical class itself does mean. It's about magic, and this quad needs to bring in that kind of a show into the game because it's harnessing all the elements. So how it's going to go about this? Well, it could be a wizard, and I really like this idea because this ties drastically to the elements themselves, as wizards are capable of harnessing magic, and that would capture the elements overall really nicely. We could have an orb or eyes or some kind of spell casting device that could glow, so it ties into the light element, and we could have it casting spells in its animation while playing its instrument that could make it float to tie into the psychic element, but it could also be made of bones, and it could use a spellcasting device that could be made of bone, but I don't think that's quite as likely considering how Rorik already has a bone spellcasting like device, and therefore I think it would actually be the possibility that it would be itself made of bones. And seeing as though Frondley really captured the element of surprise in its animation, and we did really like that when we saw its eye underneath, I really would like to see that captured once again. So maybe it could have some kind of hood over it, and then all of a sudden its animation, it puts its hood down, and then we could be revealed towards its bone structure and how it's actually made of bones, and that would be really cool, I do think. Other than that, it could be a dragon. I feel like this is tied to the magical class also very well. I've seen quite a few comments about this dragon-esque linkage towards the elements, so if any of these ideas ring a bell, I have certainly been looking at the comments. For the dragon, it could be made of bones to fit in the bone element, but seeing as though the bones might be quite brittle, seeing as though it's flying, it's up in the air, and there might be a air force coming across with the Titan being rather high up in the air, that the psychic and light element may be harnessed due to the bones needing to be kept afloat. So maybe rather than the wings themselves, obviously yes, they probably would flap around, but seeing as though there's so much force possibly needed to uplift this monster with the bones being quite brittle, that it would be the case that the psychic powers would be harnessed so that this monster can stay afloat in the air, and that it could glow possibly when these moments occur, when it's moving around in its animation much more drastically. Whatever the case with this dragon monster, I think a dragon monster, it would be really cool because we've not got a dragon monster in game. We've got things I think that are inspired from dragons, but we've not got a specific dragon monster, so getting one in game would be so cool. And the next option is truly one that I think could come true. It could be a deer. We know that we're getting Enchantler lore, and we know that Enchantler, our titan of the magical sanctum that holds the island up, has antlers coming off of it. So with this titan having antlers and the island itself concluding, it would be a very nice finale to tie into deers. For this design, we went over how we would like it to be based on a mythological creature, the quad, so it harnesses the fairy element, all of these. And I do think it could link to the Periton. The Periton is a mythological deer with wings, and this could tie into the fairy element, and I feel like this would end the island so well, bringing it all back to where it started, and it would certainly make sense, seeing as inside of the bio of this one, we are going to be seeing Enchantler lore. So it would make a ton of sense for this monster to resemble Enchantler in some capacity, as they must get along the Titan and the quad of the island. So seeing that link there would be very nice. Seeing as though it's got to harness the elements in some way, I could see this monster floating. It's got to really bring it all out, this quad, as I do think it needs to be grand and pull the Sanctum all up together. Seeing as though it really does need to be grand, I feel like, to conclude the magicals so well. I would love to see some really cool animations inside of this. Some flying, maybe. I know I'm really going into the flying element of it, but I feel like it captures the magical class really well, so I would like to see that. And therefore, the psychic element could tie into that with it floating in its animation, and we could see the light element being harnessed with how its eyes and its wings could maybe glow. And seeing as though we also need to get the bone element in there, we could have a skeletal body or skeletal wings to tie into the bone element too. I really like the idea of tying it up into the periton, as that would make it so that we're not just going off into creating a deer monster that's not tied to a mythological creature, as we do know that the fairy class does like to delve into that aspect and going deep into mythological beings, with the magical class tying it together to a nice one too, such as the periton would be a very nice idea. The next idea that I have is my favorite one, though. It would be tying into the magical kitsune. Forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, but these are foxes with magical powers. They can create illusions, shapeshift, and use fire. And this is mainly where I'm coming from with this quad idea, as I really like that fire aspect. It captures light, and you could have all different flames coming around it that are different colors. It would really add up to be a tremendous color show, and like I've been going on about, it is the end of the magical class. So I want to see magic be harnessed in this design, and capturing this mythological creature would do that perfectly, as we'd be seeing magical flying fire and stuff coming from this monster, and it would be grand, just like we want for the conclusion of the magicals. For the magical kitsune, when you look at kitsunes, they sometimes have quite feathery patterned tails, so tying into that aspect, I feel like a bone-like tail would really work out quite well for it. I don't feel like a bone body would quite work as well as what it would for the dragon design I was talking about earlier. We'd be getting the light element in from the different coloured flames that could appear around it, and we could get the psychic element too from all the fire emerging around it and its psychic powers being embraced. For when this monster will play, I think it will play during the middle verse with Pheromine. While I was listening to the song specifically for the middle verse with Pheromine and the intersection afterwards with G'day and Frondley, I feel like those sections need expansion, particularly for the one where Pheromine plays. I think the part afterwards definitely needs some, but I feel like the part with Pheromine needs some more, as it's the semi-climax of the song at that point, and I feel like it needs a bit more to lift it up. I feel like the afterwards section is a bit more of an interlude into the finale of the song and how it builds up throughout, and I feel like there's something missing with Pheromine at the moment, as there's not quite as much going on in that, and it makes sense how that interlude happens afterwards with the nice fluctuations between the breaks afterwards. So I would really like to see the quad play in those parts. For the instruments and sound, I think it will most likely be an instrumentalist. We've been following this pattern throughout the designs, as you may have noticed. I highly doubt that it is going to be a vocalist. If it is a vocalist, I'd be very surprised. I think it's very, very likely it will be an instrumentalist, following the pattern that we've seen throughout the Sanctum, where it's been going vocalist, instrumentalist, and vice versa. Breaking that trend, honestly, wouldn't make sense at this point. They've gone too far into it, and I feel like that trend is here to stay all the way up to the finale of the magical Sanctum. I would say that we are going to get a harp instrument. I feel like this is still tried and true since as last video regarding the last three magicals. I think the harp is certainly something that they could explore into. I understand that we already have Larvalus's Guzz saying, and that is a harp. But I really want to see a harp-like instrument, as I feel like that would play really nicely. We are going to be getting enchantment laws inside of the quad bio. So, so we're getting lore inside of this. I would expect for us to go into how Enchantler made it into the pocket dimension. As of right now, we know about the interdimensional gateways into the pocket dimension itself, and we know that those exist, as we've seen single element magicals now come through, and even before the single element ethereals come through also. So seeing as though Enchantler, however, is a really big monster, I would love to know how it fit through, as that is a huge undertaking by this Titan. And also, I think it's questionable as to how Enchantler knew that the pocket dimension existed in the first place. Was it aware from the ethereals and them teleporting through? Was it interested by that aspect? What exactly got Enchantler on board with this idea is something that I must know. Also, the main thing that I want to know, though, behind Enchantler is why it attempted to become a colossal and why it failed. And I also would like to know, is it actually possible for a Titan to become a colossal, and what process would be involved if it is possible? And I also would want to know why colossals are so special if it is unable to, that it can't transform into them, and what exactly prevents the Titan from becoming a colossal, because it must have got this idea in the first place from somewhere, so therefore it's presumable that this process might have been carried through before. What a weird thing to think about, guys, that the quad is going to be the final magical monster. I hope you enjoyed me talking about the final magical monster. I'm still trying to get over that fact. But now though, if you enjoyed this, make sure to leave a like down below and make sure to subscribe. I will see you guys later though. For now, bye.